Okay, let's consider this, that your answer may be clear and precise, accurate, relevant, deep, but yet lack breadth. For example, there are persons who think very deeply about complexities, but only from one point of view. And so you can have people who think deeply about problems, say from an economic perspective, and the economic perspective does shed light on certain problems, but there may be a psychological dimension of the problem which their economic reflection does not deal with. And so what we do to get breadth is there another point of view from the perspective of which we need to think about this question? So we may think about an educational question very deeply from the point of view of being teachers, but this may not adequately deal with the question from the point of view of parents. It may not adequately deal with the question from the point of view of administrators. It may not deal with the question adequately from the point of view of the law. We may come up with a wonderful solution that happens inadvertently to be illegal, in which case all of our good reasoning comes aground because we forgot to ask the legal question, to bring in the legal point of view. Okay, now there's a final standard that I'm going to bring in officially and overtly, though you'll probably notice that I use standards additional to these, and that is logicalness. And in this particular case, what do I mean by logicalness? I mean something that crosses all these other domains and applies to thinking as a whole. And as a global question, it is your thinking making sense as a unit, as a whole? Doesn't the first part of your paper seem to negate what you're saying in the last part of your paper? You said this, but later on you said that, and I don't see how it fits together. I don't see how your answer is really, the parts of your answer are consistent with it. Or I don't see how your answer is consistent with your behavior. So the standard that is lurking behind logic is consistency, where everything fits together. And let me return to the basic question of thinking, which was pointed out by Dr. Elder, to make sense of the world. Well, answers that don't make sense are answers that are in some sense incoherent. They don't add up. And so the overall standard that I'm bringing in here is a student says something and it doesn't really seem to make sense to me. It doesn't seem to fit together. Or it doesn't fit together with something else that we all seem to agree on. And so I asked that question, well, how does this fit in with that? Or how does this fit in with this other thing? Or how does this fit in with what you said before? It seems to be in conflict with it. So could you explain that? How are you making it consistent in your own mind? All right, so these are universal questions that you can ask. Essentially, what they come down to is, let's check for clarity. Let's check for precision. Let's check for accuracy. Let's check for relevance. Let's check for depth. Let's check for breadth. Let's check for logicalness. So that's a domain of questioning we're concerned with in this particular session. And so now I'm going to lead you in a discussion. And in the discussion, I am going to try to emphasize, but not exclusively ask, questions that deal with these intellectual standards. So as we talk and as I ask you questions, and by the way, as a Socratic questioner, all I'm going to do is ask you questions, and I will take your answers as the means to asking further questions, as you can see on the sheets that you have. And by that, I'll try to lead us all in a direction of better understanding the question and the answers with respect to it. For example, think of it this way. As the Socratic discussion leader, I'm like a conductor of an orchestra. I'm leading the orchestra. And I'm trying to bring all of these instruments and the sounds they're making into harmony, so that what we get out of them is a melody that sort of makes sense of things. Okay? Here's another way to say it. Imagine that all the members of the class are cells in the one brain, and that what I'm functioning as the Socratic questioner, is the inner voice of critical thinking that is correlating the thoughts of the cells. So as different cells have different thoughts, I'm the executive part of the brain trying to bring these together and help the brain make sense of it. So then the class is the community brain, and we're trying to bring the resources of all that thinking, all that experience, all that insight to bear on the question. And I, as the questioner, am trying to facilitate.